Home Secretary is going to be using a speech later today in Washington to question whether the UN's Refugee Convention is fit for the modern age. She says it's rubbish. It's not.
Suella Braverman is addressing a think tank in Washington, D.C., where she's expected to call the convention an incredible achievement and argue that politicians should basically completely reform it. Policing Minister Chris Philp joins us now. Very good morning to you.
Morning. Good morning. Hello.
Good to see you this morning. She's used a rather alarming figure, and I wonder why she's used it, that under the definitions, refugees could constitute around 900 million people. Well, I mean, we're not going to expect 900 million people making their way to the UK, are we? So why use that figure?
Well, I think that's a global figure, and it was produced by an independent think tank. I think from memory it was the CPS, the Centre for Policy Studies. But look, we've seen around the world countries experiencing enormous levels of illegal migration. Take America, for example, where the Home Secretary is giving her speech later on. I think this month alone, in the last 3 or 4 weeks in September, they've had 140,000 people crossing their southern border illegally. We've seen in Europe, I think, a couple of 100,000 people so far this year enter Europe illegally. So this is a huge global problem. And the asylum system, which started off in 1951 in the aftermath of the horrors of the Second World War, designed to protect people fleeing serious persecution, has been stretched. The definitions have been stretched, and some people who are essentially economic migrants have been using the asylum system. And I think the Home Secretary is saying that the community, countries around the world, globally, should have a conversation about that.
Sorry, but Minister, what's happening in America has got nothing to do with us in the UK. And the fact of the matter is, we already have 600,000 legal migrants in the UK. And yet you're turning your attention on global migration, trying to undermine international refugee conventions. You run the risk, I would suggest, of dehumanising people who are genuinely seeking refugee status here amongst our compassionate communities, or demonising the 600,000 legal migrants who come here.
Well, I mean, legal migration and illegal migration are two different things. There's no. Let me answer the question. There's no desire to demonise the genuine people who are being persecuted. This country has a very proud record, including in the last couple of years. So in the last 2 years, we have welcomed about somewhere in the region of 200,000 Ukrainian women and children. We've welcomed well over 100,000 people from Hong Kong fleeing persecution by the Chinese Communist Party. And we've also, in the last 2 years, welcomed, I think it's somewhere in the region of 24,000 Afghans safely and legally, I stress, safely and legally, who are fleeing from the Taliban. That's more, by the way, safe and legal Afghan arrivals than any other European country. So we're doing our bit for those who are genuinely persecuted. We're also trying to stop illegal migration. Now, the small boats is the most obvious example.
Minister, I want to cut in there because let's move on to that specifically, because this is leaked to most of the British newspapers this morning, and I think it'll be running in America as well. She's saying that channel migrants, people who cross in the small boats, are not really refugees, and we should stop treating them as such. That's a pretty blanket statement. What, none of them? None of them who cross the channel?
Well, actually, first of all, it's in law, in the Illegal Migration Act. If you cross the channel from France, then you don't get your asylum claim considered, because France is a manifestly safe country. Nobody needs to flee persecution in France. And in fact, the Refugee Convention itself, in Article 31, says that you can only you can only claim asylum if you've come directly from a place of danger. And quite clearly, France is not a place of danger. So we've legislated, and it's working, because the small boat arrivals this year, 2023, are approximately about slightly over 20% down compared to last year at the same time.
So if we know all this, if this is already established fact, as you say, you say it's unarguable, what's the point of the speech? What's she trying to do at the UN today?
Because we've done it domestically in the UK via the Illegal Immigration Act that's now in law. But other countries, around the world, I've mentioned America, I've mentioned the European Union, have these enormous problems. So I think it needs to be a global conversation to talk about how the application of the Refugee Convention can be reformed in order to make sure that we don't see enormous flows of illegal migration around the world, which America, the United States, is seeing as we speak. We
Yeah.
saw those
Okay, you
pictures
said it's
across the
global
Mediterranean as well.
So it's so interesting because one of the reasons for Brexit was so that we could maintain control of our borders. How has that not worked?
Well, I mean, as I just said, illegal immigration across the Channel is down about 22 or 23% this year compared to last year. We'd like it to go to zero, but we've taken a big step in the right direction. And we've legislated via the Illegal Immigration Act, which has helped us do that. But we need to go further.
I still don't understand. Brexit was supposed to be part of the answer. You're now saying it's a huge international issue.
Well, no. So obviously by leaving the European Union, clearly unlimited free movement, which was part of the European Union's rules, no longer applies to the UK, right?
Yep.
So that gives us a bit more control in that regard. We've taken action domestically on illegal immigration, which is down about 22%. The small boats are down 22% this year compared to last year, but we'd like to go further. But, besides dealing with it in the UK, I think the UK as a major country, also has a global leadership role to play. And although the Home Secretary spends 95% of her time thinking about the UK, today she's talking about it on a more global scale because illegal immigration is a global problem.
Very briefly, have you seen the Home Secretary's speech? Have you seen a copy of it?
So I've seen a copy of an extract of it. I haven't seen the whole speech.
And what would you say to those who are saying that basically she's doing quite a bit of grandstanding over there today?
No, I don't think that's fair. I've just pointed out how significant these problems of large-scale illegal immigration are around the world, particularly for the US and Europe. And I think it's reasonable that the British Home Secretary sort of participates in the global debate about how to sort that out. Yes, we want to protect people fleeing genuine persecution, but we can't have the asylum system being essentially abused to facilitate large-scale illegal economic migration.
OK, Minister, thank you very much for your time this morning. Thanks
OK,
for joining us. It's 8:44.
Even though migration in the United States has nothing to do with us.
It's completely
here in the UK.
couldn't be more separate, and they have a totally different way of dealing with it. But anyway.